Hi, VBS friends. Welcome to Destination Dig. My name is Lynn Jordan, and in this conference, we're going to discover some inexpensive ways to create a great atmosphere for Vacation Bible School this summer. You're going to be able to download a handout for this conference, and that will allow you to have the instructions on how to make the projects. You can also download the PowerPoint, and that way you'll be able to look back at the pictures if you need to. You know, when an archaeologist is planning a dig, the first thing they have to do is secure the funding. We can relate to that. Our churches don't have unlimited budgets. We need to stretch our VBS dollars. And you know, when an archaeologist is planning a dig, they don't just go out and start digging. They do their research so that they know the places where they dig are likely to have the artifacts that they're searching for. So in this conference, I want to suggest some places that you can dig to unearth some treasures that are going to help you decorate for Vacation Bible School this year. So first of all, I'd like to suggest that you dig through your resource room. You know, in our resource rooms, even if we're in a small church, we've probably got a lot of things that we can use for Vacation Bible School. I hope you have one of those racks with rolls of craft paper, because you're going to use a lot of craft paper this year, especially the brown. I hope you've got a bin that's got lots of masking tape, and if it's got different colors, even better. But in my resource room, I even found some unusual things. I needed a tap light, and there was one in there. I needed some fishing line and some raffia. So search through, dig through your resource room. You may need to share with the person who does your VBS decorations. That might be someone who doesn't work in children's ministry year-round. So let them know that you've got a resource room that they can dig through. The next thing I want to suggest is that you dig around your church. Your church probably already has a lot of things that you can use to decorate for Destination Dig. You know, this summer in VBS, we're going to visit the Holy Land. And that's actually the location of all of those Christmas musicals and Easter cantatas. And so your church may have some sets, they may have some props, they may have a lot of things that you can use for decorations for Destination Dig. If your church does an Easter cantata, they may have a tune. I think that tune could be reimagined into the cave for our music rotation. So look around your church and see what you have. Look in your preschool department. In the nature area, you may have some desert creatures that you could add to your VBS. Maybe in the home living, you've got some artificial fruits and vegetables that could be used in the missions market. If your church happens to have a quilting ministry, I know a lot of churches around here do, you may have some lengths of fabric that you can use to make the awnings for Vacation Bible School. Those could be laundered and returned to that ministry so that it can end up in a quilt eventually. But in the meantime, we can use it to decorate for Vacation Bible School. So dig around your church. A few weeks ago, while we were in quarantine, and can I just stop and say that's not a phrase I ever expected to use while we were in quarantine, but it happened and it's become kind of commonplace. And we were in quarantine and I was watching worship on Facebook. And I noticed that in our worship center, someone had put up a harvest display and it had crates with fruits and vegetables. So I texted my children's minister and I said, be sure we know where those end up when they're taken down. We're going to need them for the missions market in Vacation Bible School this summer. So look around your church. Dig around and see what you can find that you can use for a VBS decoration. Next, I want to encourage you to dig up some things from your recycle bin. We're going to need a lot of recycled material this year. We're going to need some jugs and some bottles and some cups. We're going to need cardboard boxes. We're going to need cardboard tubes. So dig them up from your recycle bin. And if you don't happen to be a hoarder, that's okay. The people in your church will help you find the things that you need to recycle to use for Vacation Bible School this year. Next, I want to encourage you to dig out decorations from past VBSs. You know, we don't start from scratch every year. We've got some things that we use almost every year. Maybe you've got a drop cloth that you've painted to be a ground cover. Maybe you've got a backdrop that's got just some sky on it. We can use that again. And you've probably got plungers. Plungers have become one of those VBS staples that we use year after year. I know a few years ago I was getting ready for the craft rotation in Journey Off the Map, and I was going to make some of those flowers where the top of the flower is a chip tray, and then the stem is a noodle, and it's all standing on a plunger. Well, I was in line at Dollar Tree. I was purchasing several of each of those things, and a gentleman behind me looked at my cart, and he saw all the plungers, and he said, "Ma'am, if your plumbing problem is that serious, you might need a better plunger than you can usually find at the Dollar Tree." Well, we're not going to do any plunging with our plungers, and so a dollar store plunger will work just fine to hold up our signs. But think about decorations from VBS, from past VBS that you might use again this year. Recently, we made a Jeep that can reappear in Destination Dig. And how about those pith helmets? We're going to use those again. So use your past decorations, and you'll be glad that you've got them to use again this year. Here's a question for you. If you happen to have a VBS decoration that you made 20 years ago, I'm asking for a friend. If you've got a VBS decoration from 20 years ago, do you think you might be in danger of showing up on one of those reality television series? Well, I have to admit, I've got a pot that I actually made for Truth Checkers 20 years ago, and it's going to make an appearance again this year in a Destination Dig, because we've got an archaeology theme again. And it's a little crumpled and old, but it's an ancient piece of pottery, so what do you expect? I hope you have a lot of things that you can repurpose from past decorations. And I'll try to remember as we go through the slides to mention which VBS I got the decorations from if it's something that I'm reusing. Next, I want to encourage you to dig into your creativity and see what can we make that we could use to decorate for Destination Dig. First of all, let's start with the wall that's behind me. That was simply made from some cardboard boxes. Now, we purchased ours from a discount box store that's near our office, but I think you could just recycle and use some boxes that aren't new. If it has some printing on it, you can take it apart at the seam and refold it so that the outside becomes the inside and the inside becomes the outside, and you've got a nice clean surface to paint on. But here's how we made them. I just flattened the boxes and painted around every side. So all 6 sides, you're going to do a border of the brown. And then you're going to go back in and kind of round those corners and maybe put a few streaks through the middle. And then you can put those boxes back together and stack them randomly, because this is going to be a wall that's kind of crumbling and falling down. As you can see, I added some desert creatures and some greenery, and it makes a nice wall. Another way that you might want to make a wall would be to use plastic table cover. This is the kind with the flannel on the back, and I just laid it out and drew the horizontal lines first, and then went back and drew the vertical lines kind of offsetting so that it looks like a stack of rocks. Then you're going to go in and do some shading so that it looks round. And you may want to put a few streaks, accent streaks on there as well. Then you've got a wall that you can hang anywhere, and that's going to be something that you'll use probably a lot of times. Another thing that you're probably going to want to make is some faux pottery, and I have some here. I wanted to tell you that these are very easy to make. It's just a container, actually a couple of containers, a bottle and then a cup. They are just taped together, and then I cover the whole thing with masking tape. And then you're going to rub it with a crayon, and when you do that, the pieces of masking tape kind of catch the crayon, and it creates a nice design of some pottery that's very, very weathered. These were easy to make. We even made them with the kids who came to our Destination Dig play day. And you can see that each of these kids have made a piece of pottery. That only took about 10 or 15 minutes, and you can probably do that even quicker. Let me show you some of the pottery that we made. I want to show you the components of the pottery and then what the finished product looks like. This one was a detergent bottle, a jug, and it's got a plastic cup setting at the top. Again, everything's covered with masking tape. And on this one, you can see that we accented the neck of the bottle and the handle with some raffia. This one was made from, I think, a peanut butter jar, one of those short, fat ones, and then it's got a pimento cheese container for the top. This one was made from a jar of peanuts. It's got a plastic cup on the top. And I need to warn you, this process can be a little bit addictive. Everything you see, every container you see is going to have pottery potential, and you're going to want to make everything into a piece of pottery for Vacation Bible School. Here's a picture of my niece, Abigail. That's her pumpkin that I made her for trick or treat, and it's a barrel of cheese balls. And after we finished the cheese balls, we thought that'll make a great piece of pottery. So we stuck an ice cream bucket in the top of it, covered the whole thing with masking tape, and I used the wider masking tape on this one because it was bigger. And then instead of rubbing it with crayon, I painted it with some paint to get the color on. But it made a great piece of pottery. I think my favorite piece, though, are the ones that are made from the Gatorade containers. I love the design on the bottom, and when you cover that with the masking tape and then rub it, that design kind of pops out, the color, the crayon kind of catches on that and pops out, and I thought that made a fun one. If you would like to make a piece of the bigger pottery, this was made with 3 containers, and what you're going to do is put the first container down and then set a ball in it. This was a Nerf ball, but you could probably use a playground ball as well. And then the next container, a Cool Whip container, was turned upside down, and then the top one is balanced on that. Everything was taped together, and then the entire thing was covered with masking tape. But on this one, I went ahead and decoupaged the outside of it. I used some Mod Podge, and then the final layer was actually some tissue paper. I put a little bit of paint in the Mod Podge so that when you put it on, you got the color, and it was finished when you were through with that. Here's something that you might want to make, and this is just a little pith helmet that is made from a bowl and a plate, a paper bowl and plate that I got at Walmart. And to make it, you're going to trace the bowl onto the plate, and then you're going to cut that circle out. Now, when you cut it out, you need to make it a little bit smaller. You need to leave a little bit of a lip because the rim of the bowl is going to set on that when you put the whole thing together. Now, for the bowl, you need to make a couple of holes on each side. We wanted our pith helmet to have some ventilation, so use some hole punch, and if you've got the long reach kind, that works even better. You're going to make a couple of holes on each side, and then I wanted to mark around my holes, and so I decided to use some of the reinforcers, the hole reinforcer stickers, but I didn't want it to be the neon colors, so I just painted over that with a permanent marker before I took it off the release paper, and then put that around the vent holes that I had punched into my cap. The strap that goes across the top, that's just a narrow piece of masking tape. And then to make the chin strap, I just folded a length of cording in half, and I put the loop through a wooden bead, and then the other 2 ends of the cord are glued to either side of the plate to make the chin strap for the pith helmet. If you'd like to make one of these dig logs, you can see that I've just repurposed one of those nice journals that they gave us for VBS a couple of years ago when we first started having the It's Worth It. And I wanted to repurpose mine into a dig log, and I really liked that it had that elastic closure. I thought that would be handy if you were an archaeologist at a dig site. So I just made a sticker to go over the logo. It said dig log, and I just stuck that on there, and I thought that made a cute little decoration for this year. Let's take a look at each of the places that we have to decorate for VBS and think of some inexpensive ways that we might decorate each one of them. Let's start with the worship rally dig site. This is probably going to be in your worship center, and you may have a large area that needs to be covered. So let's think about some things that you might do. The first thing I thought we needed was the hole. If it's a dig site, we need a hole. And in order to make mine, I just got some shallow cardboard boxes. I got mine at the discount grocery store, and these are the ones that they put out the canned goods in, and they gave me several. You may want to do 6, but you may want to do a lot more than that. And I simply put these together with binder clips, clipped them together, and then over the top of this, I put some brown paper. And as you can see, there are little bamboo skewers, and I put them at each intersection where everywhere the boxes came together. I just stuck them through the paper and down into the grooves that are in the cardboard. And you want to make a grid that covers the whole thing. And then I went around that with a cord, some orange cord. I hope you can see that on the picture there, because it makes the grid. You know, archaeologists make a grid so that they can determine exactly where each artifact is found. Around my dig site, I wanted to put some flagging tape. This is flagging tape that was recycled from last year from Concrete and Cranes. And I put it around the dig site, and I used the plungers to hold that. They made nice stands for that. The sandbags that you see in this picture, they're actually just pillows that I wrapped in the burlap. And you can see that behind that, I put up some of the barrier fencing from last year's VBS. I thought that looks like something that you might have at a dig site. Now, if you have a large stage in your worship center and you need to put more, you could add maybe a little pop-up tent that you borrow from someone in your church. And you could even put the wall that we made earlier if you need to cover a lot of space. Let's think about the Bible study tent. Most of us have several Bible study departments in our VBS, and so we might need to make several of these, one for each class. So we need something very inexpensive. You know, we're probably not going to be able to purchase a backdrop for each one. So I wanted to think of an inexpensive way to suggest a Bible study tent. So what I came up with was to use a couple of plastic table covers. I used a round one and an oblong one. The round one I just tucked into the grid that holds up the drop ceiling. This isn't fastened in any other way, it's just tucked in there. And I thought, when the boys and girls look up, that's going to give the suggestion of being inside the tent and see the ceiling of the tent. For the door of the tent, I used a tension rod and put the oblong tablecloth over that, and then I split it up the center almost to the top, and you can see I pulled back either side and attached it to the wall to make the door of our tent. Something else that you might want to do, if you happen to have a teen kid parachute, that could easily be tucked into the ceiling of your Bible study room, and boys and girls would enjoy feeling like they're in a tent as they have their Bible study. Let's look at the missions market. You know, for missions, we're going to need crates of fruits and vegetables. So I wanted to give you some ideas about how to make some of that. Here is an easy way to make a crate. This is just a cardboard box, and it's got the masking tape, wide masking tape. I went around the top and around the bottom, and then I covered each corner with the masking tape and went back in with a brown crayon and drew some wood grain on there so that it would look like wood. I used some raffia in mine. You could use some shredded paper or some crimped paper, and then just add some artificial fruits or vegetables, and there you've got your crate. Another thing that I thought would be fun for missions, if we've still got some of that little fencing that we used in Kingdom Capers, you know, we made little English gardens everywhere. So outside your room, you might want to make a little garden if you've got some of that you recycled from that VBS. Because in missions, we're going to be talking about church planting. And the boys and girls are going to see that just like the farmers who bring their fruits and vegetables to market, they've grown all of those things. Well, we have church planters all over the world who are planting churches. And that's what we're going to be learning about in missions this year. You know, in missions, we always have to have the video. So I wanted to show you how you could make a missions market with just a TV cart. You could use a length of fabric and hang that from the ceiling above your TV. And then on the TV cart, you could put the crates and the vegetables and fruit and the pottery that you've made. Another option would be to use one of those little kitchen carts. I think we used one last year as a vendor cart, but this time you could put the fruits and vegetables on that cart and then stick an umbrella into one of the corners, and that could be your little missions market. Let's take a look at artifact crafts. You know, crafts is going to be in a laboratory where an archaeologist might take his finds to display and to study. And so one of the things that I thought we could do is to make our display, we could use one of those little frames, those little acrylic frames. So you could just print off the information about your artifact, put that in the frame, and then set the frame upside down and on its side so that it's a label for your display. Another thing that I made was this artifact craft sign. And really, you could make this for any rotation. I just happened to have made this one for crafts. But the artifact crafts, that's the Dig It font. That's a free download on your clip art CD-ROM. So print it out, and then you're going to want to tea stain that paper. And in order to tea stain it, just take a tea bag and a wet tea bag, and you're going to just drag it all over the paper to kind of age it and weather it. And then I decoupaged this with the Mod Podge to a piece of insulation foam. Then I went around it after everything was dry, and I kind of cut it out with jagged angles to make it look like a piece of broken pottery. Then I went around that with some crayon to kind of age the edges of it. So that might be something you'll want to make for artifact crafts, or maybe some of your other rotations as well. Now, in the Decorating Made Easy book, there are instructions for making a hologram. And I included this because I wanted to show you a less expensive version if you need to do that. You're going to need one of those display frames, those acrylic display frames. You're going to need a small box. I used a Christmas card box because you need a box that's small enough that you can set the frame on top of it. You'll need some wax paper and a tap light and some colored pencils, and then print off the clip art for the hologram. You're going to put the clip art down, and then over top of it, tape some of the wax paper. Then you're going to go in with your colored pencil and trace all of those grid lines at the top and at the bottom. You're going to cut this out and then cut out the pottery. And then when you tape it back together, you're going to see that it makes the shape for the hologram. So you've got the wax paper everywhere the light color is, and you've got the actual pottery. You're gonna put that into your acrylic stand, and then put your box down, put some fabric over that, and put the tap light right in the middle, and then balance your acrylic frame over that so that the tap light is shining up and it looks like it's creating the hologram. You know, archaeologists use the holograms to show them what would it look like if I had the whole pot, not just these pieces. And so that would be a fun thing to make for artifact crafts. Let's think about the desert cave music. You know, the Dead Sea Scrolls were actually found in a cave. And I wanted to make sure that I pronounced the name of the cave correctly. So I asked our Google Home, how do you pronounce the cave where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found? And he said, that is pronounced the cave where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Okay, that's not what I was looking for, but I finally got him to tell me that those are the Qumran caves. And so that's the kind of cave that we're going to create for our music rotation. Here's the picture. I just did this whole thing with the brown craft paper that's just crumpled and attached to the wall with some marvelous tape. The nice thing about this is that you can just take it down, put it in a bag, and it's ready for next time. I'm going to share mine with Miss Amy. She's going to do the music rotation at our training. You're not going to hurt it because it's already crumpled paper. Now to create the stalactites, those are the ones that hang from the ceiling. I just did some strips of the paper and hung it from the ceiling in my room. And to create the stalagmites, those are the ones that come up from the floor of the cave, I took one of the cones from Concrete and Cranes, wrapped the brown paper around it, and then set that on the floor of my cave. One of the things that they're going to do in music this year, the song that they will learn is based on the bonus scripture for each day. And so I thought it would be fun to make a parchment of each of those verses. So here's what I did. I printed it out on some kind of cream colored paper. And then I used, again, the tea stain to age it. And then I use the lighter to light a candle, and you need to do this over the kitchen sink, and you need the vent in your kitchen to be going as well. It does not smell good. But I just burned the edges, and it turned out looking like this, and I thought that looks like some sort of ancient piece of parchment, and there it's got our verse on it. Okay, let's take a look at the scroll jars. The scroll jars, you know, that the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in jars, and they look something like this, and I thought it'd be fun to create one for our music rotation. So I just used a couple of chip cans, and one of them I cut in half, and then the other one I cut the center section off. And then these were all taped together, and then the whole thing was covered in masking tape. For the lid of the jar, I wanted to have the little knob, so I've got a smaller lid that I've taped in the center. The whole thing, again, is just covered with masking tape, rubbed with a crayon to create the scroll jar. And this really does look a little bit like the jars that I found online. If you want to make the scroll that's inside, we just use some decorative paper, and we glued a dowel to each end, rolled it together, and these finials were made just from some of those little wooden knobs that you can get at the craft store. If you want to make the scrolls to go in your scroll jar, that's the instructions for that. Okay, let's talk about the recreation ruins. And most of us don't do a lot of decorating for recreation, but if you wanted to, I think either the wall made out of boxes or the wall that you drew on the table cover would be a great thing to have in the recreation ruins. And maybe you would like to have a column, a pillar. And here's how I made one. This is just a cardboard tube and a box. Now the box, you're going to need the top and the bottom, and you're going to cover both of them. The top one is just going to set on the top of your pillar, so it can just be covered and then you set it there. But the bottom of the box, you're going to want to cut a hole in it so that you can insert the column. Now one thing I didn't do on this picture that you might want to do is just add some cracks with some permanent marker so that it looks a little bit older. And I got the contact paper for this at the Dollar Tree. Let's talk about mess tent snacks. Now I know my church, the kids just grab their snack very quickly and they go on and eat it while they're waiting at recreation. And some churches actually serve the snack in the missions rotation so the kids can eat it while they're watching the missions video. But if you have an area that you want to decorate for mess tent snacks, I wanted to suggest that you use one of these pop-up canopies. And if you've got kids who play Little League Baseball or maybe soccer, their parents may have one of these pop-ups. They're very popular at those events, and maybe your parents would have some that you could borrow to use for VBS. But it would be fun to put this up, and then maybe the table that goes underneath could be decorated to look like a crate. You know, a mess tent is a temporary thing that's put up to feed people who aren't going to be there for very long. So you don't want a lot of things that look permanent. It would also be fun in the mess tent to have a little sign where you could put what the snack for that day was going to be. You know, also in all of my rotations, I think it's a good idea to display maybe the motto or the theme verse. And it's a good idea to have a place where you can put the verse for the day or the daily truth, because we want to help those rotation leaders be able to reinforce to the boys and girls that what we're doing in rotations is all about what we learned in Bible study, and that's going to help them make that connection. The next thing that I want to suggest is that you dig for bargains at the dollar store. I want to show you a few things that I found at my local Dollar Tree that I ended up using for Vacation Bible School. I purchased some grits. I think I told you that's what my sand was for the hole in at the dig site in Worship Rally. And the reason I purchased grits is because they were $1 a pound, and over in the craft area, sand was a half pound for $1. So I thought grits were a better deal. They're lighter weight and they're easier to clean up, I think. So I bought my grits for my sand. I also found those nice brushes with the metal handle. I thought that just looks like something that could be at an archaeological dig. And I liked the metal tweezers. I found those in the hardware aisle. And then I also found the plastic tweezers. They were over in the educational department. I found my magnifying glass there. And I wanted to show you what we did with the pencils and the erasers. This is Levi. He was at the craft day, the play day that we had for Destination Dig, and you can see that he's making his scroll. And on either end of the scroll, we taped a pencil. And then on both ends of each pencil, we put little erasers to serve as the finials on our scroll. And over on the other side, you will see the dig site, the miniature dig site that I made. Almost everything on the dig site was purchased at the Dollar Tree. I got the grits there for the sand. You'll see the sand toys there. We used those as we were digging. Now the pith helmets, those are actually recycled from VBS a few years ago. But there were lots of things at Dollar Tree that made it into our play day for Destination Dig. Here are a few other things that I found. I like those tarps that you get at Dollar Tree. They're inexpensive, and that would be a great way to make your Bible study tent, maybe instead of using the table covers. There are the bamboo skewers that I used in my dig site, and of course there's the plunger. There's the contact paper that I used to cover my pillar, and there's the frame that I used in the Artifact Crafts display. Also, you'll see up in the corner, that's a tea strainer, but I thought I could see an archaeologist using that to sift through the sand to see what he can discover. I also want to encourage you to do some digging online. There are lots of things that you can find there. I hope that you're a member of the VBS Directors Club. If not, you can go to the Lifeway website and join that club. There's a lot of free resources there. And if anything new comes out, that's also where you can get that information. And I hope that you're on Pinterest. So I hope you'll look at the Pinterest board. I have a Pinterest board called Dig. We used that when we were writing VBS, and it was private then, but now that the theme has been announced, I've made that public so that you can go on there and see that. And when you get ready to do Vacation Bible School, as we get a little bit closer, I think you're going to see a lot of Pinterest boards that have been made for Vacation Bible School, and I hope that you will make one. I'm looking forward to seeing what you have made and all the things that you did to decorate for your Vacation Bible School. We all need to share those so that we can all see them. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so excited to see what's going to happen in Destination Dig this coming summer. And I would like for us to have prayer together. Father, thank you so much for the great tool that you've given us in Vacation Bible School. Lord, we are so excited to see how you're going to use that this summer. Lord, thank you for including us and letting us be a part of that. Lord, we are already depending on you for everything we need to accomplish what you called us to do. Lord, we ask you for the time, the energy, the patience, everything we need to accomplish what you've called us to do. And Lord, we just thank you that you've included us in this. And Lord, we ask that you would bless it and that everything we do would bring glory to you. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you.